You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope you all are well. And for those of you in the US, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Weather permitting, I plan to spend mine mountain biking, then watching some football and feasting with my family, as is the stereotypical American way, I suppose. I have also been thinking that I should share that I have been taking some of my own advice lately, and it's working. If you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you've heard some of the basic tenets of maintaining your best and injury-free performance during and beyond this menopause transition. Stuff like regular resistance training, including lifting heavy loads, a consistent mobility practice, incorporating plyometrics or jumping into your training, and so forth. If I'm honest, I'm pretty good at the resistance training and plyometrics part of that equation. I am less great at mobility because, well, I find it boring. And I can get away with not doing it when I'm just riding my bike. But I've been trying to run more, and I cannot get away with it when I am running. My legs end up feeling like garbage, and my form is clunky, and I have a hard time getting into that magical place where you can just run and you're not thinking about how far you're running or the fact that you are running. So, for the past month or so, I have been doing a dedicated mobility and strength practice that is specifically designed for runners that includes 5 minutes of mobility work, including controlled articular rotational exercise or CARs at the beginning and also at the end. And wow, it's kind of hard to believe how good I feel running right now. I feel loose and balanced and free, and I'm just joyfully running with all kinds of thoughts going through my mind, besides the fact that, my God, I'm running and this is hard. It's really been revelatory for me. And so if you're like me and you know what to do, but you don't always do it, that's just my 2 cents of like, maybe try it. I recommend it. Which segues perfectly into this week's guest, longtime endurance athlete and coach Phaedra Kennedy, who runs a coaching business called PK Performance Coaching. Phaedra is part of our community, and I follow her on Instagram. And I started seeing her posting about she had just been through a doozy of a perimenopause, and she had to sort of change things up. And she developed another system of training and a way of thinking about things and got a little more flexible with herself. And it has just helped her maintain her active life. And she has developed similar philosophies and plans for the women in this time of life who she works with. So I reached out and I asked if she would want to come on and share her story and chat about these adaptations and how she thinks about coaching other women in this demographic to feel and perform their best at this time of life. And we just had a really great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to her. And I think you'll get as much out of this as I did. You can find her at pkperformancecoaching.com, which of course I will put a link to in the show notes so you can easily check out her and her services. Before we get to it, while you're in those show notes, click the link and sign up for my free weekly 40 plus newsletter, Feisty 40 Plus, with all the research and training news you can use. Give us a follow at Feisty Menopause on Instagram and Facebook. And of course, come on over and join the 33,000 women just like you in our private Hit Play Not Pause Facebook community. Thank you, as always, for the continued great 5-star ratings and nice reviews. It always warms my heart, and it definitely helps the show. Finally, before we get to it, very quick thanks to NutriSense for their continued support of the show. They've got that new service where you can book a call with a registered dietitian, and it's covered by insurance, which is a pretty great thing. So you can check that out in the show notes and give them a call as well. All right, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. All right, Phaedra, Welcome to Hit Play Not Pause. I'm so glad that I often don't reach out cold calling to people, but I saw your Instagrams and your posts, and I was like, she is very relatable as someone in our audience. So I'm glad you responded, and I'm glad you're here.
Me too. I was so excited when I got that note. I was like, oh my God. I'm starstruck, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I appreciate that. But we all, like you and I were talking before I hit record, I do think that we're all part of this community and stories like yours I find very relatable and they're often not really spoken, especially sort of how you got into, the training and where you are. And I think that the more people can hear other stories like their own, the less alone they feel, and that's just a huge part of getting through this transition is not feeling alone.
Yep, agreed. Because it can be very lonely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So let's set the stage a little bit for people who do not know you, and I'll put how to find you and follow you in the show notes. But I understand that you are a competitive age group triathlete and runner with more than 25 years of running experience and well over a decade of triathlon. So you are 53 now, is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
And then how did you find endurance sports? It sounded from what I could see that you found it maybe a little bit later. So I'm just curious how your evolution into sport in general.
So I was 27 when I started running. And I had a little Timex Ironman watch, and I did run walk before I even knew what run walk was. So I was trying to get back into shape. It was just after university, and I'd gained a ton of weight in university. I played soccer like all through high school, and I played two different teams. So I was playing 4 to 5 days a week, lots of running, lots of activity. And then as soon as I got into university, I was like, I'm done.
Super common. Yeah.
That's it. I didn't have time for anything else. So once I got out of university, I was like, okay, I really need to do something. So I had been walking to work, and then I thought, I also would really like to start running again. So I started just run walk. And I went out thinking, yeah, I can run for half an hour. Oh my God, I think I made it 10 minutes. And I was like, okay. And then I was sore for 2 days after. So I was like, okay, I need a different strategy. So I started with run walk, and I had a pedometer. I got a
Oh
pedometer. So that was the day back in the day
my God, yes.
for GPS, right? So I was like, okay, let's just see. Once I started getting up to like 20 minutes, I thought, let's just see how far I'm actually going. So it took me a good 6 months of run walk and then gradually building. My goal was to get to 30 minutes straight of running. So I got to that in about 6 months. And with the pedometer was saying, okay, I think you're running about 5-ish kilometers. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's time for me to do a 5K race. So I signed up for Run for the Cure because, breast cancer runs in my family. I lost both my grandmothers to it.
Mm.
There's a history of it there. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it for my grandmas. And once I did that, oh my God, all bets were off. I was hooked. I was like, that was the best thing ever. Even though I like positioned myself at the back with the people with the strollers, because I didn't know. You have no idea how fast you can go.
Yeah.
So then I'm running through people and whatever, and I finished that race feeling very accomplished. So that was the start. And then I thought the next year, I'm like, I'm gonna race some more 5Ks, and then maybe I'm gonna do an 8K. I had no idea what I was doing. No clue. I just started. Runner's World was out at the time.
Oh yeah, I've written for them.
Yeah. And I started reading that. So trying to learn more about endurance sports and running. Um, and then eventually I made it to a 10K. And then the following year, I was like, you know what? I think it was 2000. I was like, I think I'm going to do a half marathon. I think I'm ready. So I joined the running room. I thought there's no way I know I can train for this by myself. I need help. So I joined the running room, which is like a chain of stores throughout Canada. I think there's some in the States. Is John Stanton was the founder, and they had training groups, and you would join a group and you would train for a race together. So it was great. You had the community, you had the accountability, and I learned about progression, proper progression. We did the run walk method.
Yep.
So for me, it was like, okay, I understand this, run 10 minutes, walk 1 minute. And I did that first half marathon. Man, was it ever hard. But I had such a great time, and that community was just awesome. So I continued that journey. And when I did my first marathon, which was 2001, I did the same thing. I went back to the running room, same thing, and did my first marathon and was like, all right, that was awesome. And at that point, I thought, okay, I'm going to try and qualify for Boston.
Mm,
Like I just set the bar, set it up there. Because I came in, I did like a 3:55 first marathon. So that's not bad.
yeah.
And, I didn't really do any speed work or anything like that. So I remember talking to the group leader at the running room and told him my goal. And he was like, oh, you know, oh, that's aggressive. I had to take like, at that point, it was a 3:40 qualifying time. So I had to take 15 minutes off my time. And I did it with speed work. I ended up taking like 21 minutes off my time. And I qualified for Boston on my second marathon doing run walk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was hooked after that. Hooked. And at that time, I also met my future husband. We met at the running room. And at the time, he was training, he did his marathon, and then we started running together. A group of us started running together that summer. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm doing Ironman. I got into Ironman
Oh
Canada,
no.
Ironman Lake Placid. Oh yeah, that's you know where this is going. So I thought I knew what Ironman was because I'd seen Kona on TV, and I thought, you're bananas. You're insane. Um, and then we eventually started dating. And so I was dating him as he's training for his first Ironman. I'm surprised we made it through that phase. But I understood from an endurance athlete, like as an endurance athlete, I sort of understood the dedication and process. And I went to watch him do it in Lake Placid. And I remember standing at the finish line, just bawling my eyes out, watching random strangers finish because you know how hard they've worked. I watched how hard he worked, and I thought, I'm gonna do this one day. But I'm not someone that will just jump right into, I wasn't gonna go
Right.
out and do an Ironman. I wanted to sort of like get in the pool, learn how to swim, get on the bike. Like I think I had just started riding at that point, and I was like, okay, let's start with, I should have started with a sprint, but I didn't. Because I know, because everybody I knew at the time was training for Ironman. So there was a race in Muskoka called the Muskoka Long Course, which ended up turning into the Muskoka Chase. And it was a 2K swim, 55K bike, and a 15K run. And I thought, I can do that.
Yeah, okay.
I can do that. 55K is not that far, and 15K, I was already doing that. So that was my first race.
Yeah, that's okay. I
It
mean,
was a bit of a comedy of errors, but I did it, and I was like, okay, I need to do more of these. So there was a progression. That was like 2004. Um, but I did start with duathlon in 2003 before I actually, so
mhm.
there was kind of a logical progression because swimming to me was just like, oh God. Oh God. Like the pool was one thing, but open water, I'll never forget my first open water swim. I got in the water, put my face in the water, and I was like, oh my God, I can see the bottom. My husband was like, duh. And then I swam out further and I'm like, oh my God, it's black. I can't see anything. How to help you. So, I had to overcome that.
Yeah.
And it was a process. Um, but I got stuck in pretty quickly. And endurance sports quickly became a part of my life and who I was and the community that I was a part of. And yeah, it just sort of evolved that way. And then, um, I had a pretty demanding job, so it was also a pretty good outlet for me
Mhm.
to de-stress. Um, and then we tried to have kids. We went through I mentioned this in my email, the whole fertility cycle of fertility because I have stage 4 endometriosis, or I had it. And that sort of really did a number on my reproductive system. Like my fallopian tubes were completely blocked.
Mm.
And that was a process trying to